So someone just made you an offer to buy your company. Maybe it came through a broker. Maybe a strategic buyer reached out directly. Maybe private equity has been circling for the past 2 years and they finally put a number on the paper. Here's what no one tells you in that moment. The number on that term sheet is almost never the real number. The real offer is buried in the structure. I've been on the receiving end of those calls for 29 years in Texas commercial real estate. The call a founder makes 3 months after the wire hits when they return from vacation, they realize the deal they signed was nothing like the deal they thought they were getting. 9 times out of 10, it was not the price that broke them, it was the structure. Many should simply ask themselves, is this cash payout doing more for my family than a thriving business they could watch, learn from, and one day perhaps even lead? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 4 most common buyout structures, what each one promises, what each one actually delivers, and the one question you need to ask before you sign any of them. Now, before I show you the 4 structures, let me give you the one filter that changes how you read every single deal you receive. Every term sheet you will ever receive can be evaluated with one question. After I sign this, who controls my outcome? If the answer is you, then you have a foundation to negotiate from. But if the answer is them, the headline number is truly irrelevant. You're no longer a principal. You're an employee with a delayed severance and no recourse. So run every structure I'm about to show you through that filter. Keep it in your head as we go along. So here are the 4 most common buyout structures. Structure 1, the earnout. This is called the golden handcuff. This is the structure buyers love most, and it is the one that produces the most post-exit regret of any deal type that I've ever seen. So here's how it works. The buyer offers you a compelling headline number, let's say $20 million, but $12 million of it is contingent. You get $8 million up front at close, and the remaining $12 million only pays out if you hit specific revenue or EBITDA targets over the next 2 or 3 years. That sounds reasonable, you may think, but here's the reality. So you used to be the decision maker, right? The person who set the strategy, hired the team, and controlled the outcome. But the moment you sign an earnout, you become an employee answering to a buyer who does not understand your culture, does not respect your process, and has every financial incentive to move the goalposts before the earnout period even ends. Your company slowly becomes a prison. Your office looks the same, your name is still on that door, but you no longer actually own the game you're playing. You're playing someone else's version of it. The variation of this that catches founders off guard is the advisor role. The buyer says something like, we want you to stay on as a consultant for 18 months. We value your relationships and your expertise. Let me decode what this actually means, though. It means they need your face and they need your name to keep clients calm during the handover. So you're going to sit in meetings where your ideas are going to be ignored by people with less skin in the game than you have ever had. And watching someone run your life's work into the ground with no ability to intervene is a specific kind of suffering that no check can ever prepare you for. So after you sign that earnout, they control your outcome. Unless that upfront number alone meets your walkaway number, you want to treat the contingent portion as money you may never see. I recently had a call with a client who sold 60% of his stake in the energy company that he founded to a private equity firm with a 40% carry earnout. I think he got something like $220 million in cash with the upside potential for another $300 million if the earnout went as planned. But his plans were different than the private equity firm's plans. He lost his control and the company downsized the business development functions. And his remaining 40% earnout, it became worthless while he was forced to stay an additional 3 years to helplessly watch it implode. Stories like this are all too common. Then there's structure number 2 that I see is called rollover equity, the second bite of the apple. Structure 2 is one most founders overlook. And in the right situation, it is the most financially intelligent deal on this list. Here's how it works in essence. Instead of selling 100% of your company, you sell 60% to 70%, then you take a significant check at close. enough to protect your family and remove the financial pressure. But you retain a meaningful minority stake, and the buyer brings in their operational team to handle the day-to-day. You stay on as the vision holder and strategic guide. And when the buyer eventually sells the company in 4 to 7 years, your remaining equity gets a second liquidity event, often at a higher multiple than the first. This is called the second bite of the apple. And for founders who still believe in the growth trajectory of their company, it is a structure that keeps you rich and keeps you relevant. The key variables to negotiate in this are your minority protections, your role definition, and your ability to trigger a sale if the buyer stalls. Get those wrong, and the rollover equity becomes a different kind of earnout trap. You have liquidity on paper, but no control over when or whether you actually see it. So in this, you control your outcome only if you negotiate minority protections with teeth. Without them, you're just a passenger with an equity stake. Structure number 3 is taking outside capital while retaining control. This is called the growth capital play. And it is not a sell at all. It's for founders who aren't ready to leave, and it comes with a psychological trap most people never see coming. The structure is different on this one from the first two because you're not actually selling to a buyer. You're bringing in a capital partner while remaining a controlling partner. Here's how it generally works. A private equity firm or family office takes a minority stake, typically 20 to 40%, and they inject growth capital into the business. You remain majority owner and you retain your operating role and you retain veto power over the major decisions. In exchange, you take some money off the table, which is great, and you get a well-capitalized partner to fund the next phase of growth. All sounds great. This is the right structure for founders who are not ready to leave, who see significant upside ahead, but want to reduce their personal financial concentration risk without giving up the will. But here's the tension you need to understand before you sign that deal. The moment you bring in outside capital, you add a new layer to every decision. Investors have expectations. They have audit rights. They have board seats. You still own the daily headaches of running the business, but now you have a partner with return expectations sitting on top of that. The money you took off the table can become difficult to enjoy if the business underperforms because you will feel the pressure of the investor's timeline. Now, every investor will say, we're patient capital, we're patient capital. But as soon as you take that patient capital, it becomes urgent capital because money always desires speed. They never discohabitate. They always cohabitate together, money and speed. And so the psychological trap ends up being this. If the business accelerates after you bring them in, you prove to yourself that you sold too cheap. And if the business slows down, you prove you were wrong to stay. The middle path requires a high tolerance for accountability to people other than yourself. So it ends up being a lose-lose in the end. You see what happens? And so you control your outcome, but only as long as your cap table and governance documents give you the authority to act on it. You want to have an attorney who has done this deal type before, have them review every line of this before you sign. Because for many folks, taking on investors is the worst decision they've ever made. Structure number 4 is the full cash out, the clean exit. This last structure is the simplest. It's also the one that requires the most discipline after the wire hits. Because the real risk isn't the deal, it's what you do next. A strategic or financial buyer purchases 100% of your equity. You walk away with a check, no earnout, no rollover stake, no advisory role. The deal is done, you're off, you're free. But here's what most founders do not understand about strategic buyers specifically. They're not buying your business because they love your product or admire your culture. They may use that like they might use patient capital to get into the door. But they're buying it to eliminate a competitor, or perhaps to fill a product gap, or acquire your customer relationships. And once they own it, your culture is subject to their playbook. Your team will be evaluated against their org chart. The things you spent years protecting may be gone within 8 or 18 months. That's not a reason not to sell. It's a reason to go into the sale clear-eyed. So let's do a legacy check. Before you sign a full cash out, sit with this question. Is this cash payout doing more for my family than a thriving business they could watch, learn from, and perhaps even one day lead? A business that generates strong, predictable monthly cash flow is rarer than most founders realize until after they've sold one. Private equity firms know this. This is why they want to buy you. The question is whether you understand it as clearly as they do before you sit across the table. They know something you do not know. So if the answer is yes, the cash does more than the business at this stage, then exit clean. Don't look back. Do not call your old managers. Do not watch the revenue numbers. The moment you sign, the chapter is closed. You're done. But any half exit where you watch someone else run your company poorly is not a strategy. It's just something like prolonged grief. So they control the business the day after you sign. You want to make sure your walkaway number, your freedom number, and your legacy number are fully funded by what you net after taxes, after fees, and after depreciation recapture before you accept any headline price. A few days ago, I sat across from a founder in Dallas who signed a $415 million deal. He had controlled that company for decades. But 30 days after signing, he couldn't even approve a $5,000 legal invoice without the buyer's sign-off. That's the offer filter working in real life. Not a theory, not a checklist. It's the difference between signing a deal and signing away your autonomy. Let me walk you through some alternatives. The 4 buyout structures I just walked you through are what buyers offer. Here are 4 alternatives that founders rarely consider counteroffering because no one brings them up until after the deal is done. The first is the internal transition. So why don't you promote your best manager, best operator to CEO? Let them run the daily machine, put out the fires, handle the meetings, the personnel decisions. You step up to a chairman role. You keep the ownership, the cash flow, and the final vote on anything that really matters. You win back your time without surrendering your asset. So what, they can only do 80% or 90% a good job as you can. Is the 10 or 20% really worth the squeeze? This is the most underused exit alternative on this list. The second alternative is an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan that lets you sell a portion of your company to your employees through a trust. Now, go speak with your financial advisor, go speak with your tax advisor, your attorney. But it seems to me that you get liquidity, a meaningful tax advantage, and your culture stays intact because the people who built it now own a piece of it. It's not the right structure for every business, but for a founder who built something worth protecting, it's worth understanding before you sit across from a buyer. The third alternative is the clean break, but only if you really mean it. If you're going to sell completely, be done with it. Don't look at the revenue numbers after. Do not call your old managers. Do not watch what they do with what you built. The moment you sign, that chapter is closed. Any version of a half exit where you remain close enough to watch but not close enough to control is not a transaction. It just prolonged misery. And the fourth alternative is the one no one warns you about, which is called social gravity. And this is the most interesting of the 4 alternatives. When you own a business that works, you have weight. People actually return your calls. Your team looks up to you. The community around you respects what you've built. But when you exit completely, that gravity somehow dissipates. It disappears faster than you'd ever expect. The phone stops ringing. The network moves to the next active player. Many founders realize too late that they would have chosen the weight of responsibility over the lightness of being irrelevant. If anyone had just framed it that way before they had signed. So let me walk you through what a walkaway number is, which is your non-negotiable before any conversation. Before you sit across the table from any buyer offering any of these 4 structures, you need 3 numbers written down. You want to actually write these numbers down and know them by heart. The first is your freedom number, the minimum net proceeds after taxes, after fees, after depreciation recapture that would replace your business income for 20 years at a conservative yield. The second number you need is your legacy number, This is the amount that funds the next generation of your family without liquidating principal. And the third number is your walkaway number, the floor below which no structure, no matter how clean the terms are, is worth signing. It's a no-go zone, if you will. If you don't know all three before the first meeting, you're negotiating blind. The buyer across the table knows their numbers precisely. You need to know your numbers with the same precision. So I want you to drop in the comments which of the four structures on the table for you right now, or which one concerns you the most. I'm going to read every comment and I'll answer directly. The business world tells you to build, scale, and sell. It almost never tells you that that piece of paper actually says something very different. But now you know. Don't sign blind.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Watch this video next.